We're back with more Heroes of Light and Shadow. Now that the prologue is over, I can switch over to my hard mode file and begin the main story proper. But first we get, yes you guessed it, another recap of the previous game. Now it's kind of justified in this case because in the original Mystery of the Emblem, this is where the game began. So yeah, this was in fact the original opening text scroll, and this theme that's playing here is called Mystery of the Emblem. Now also, wait a minute, this picture here. If you look here, you'll see, from left to right, Maria, Minerva, Sheeta, Ma, I believe that's Ogma, Harden, and Nina. I'm pretty sure that's who they all are. Not sure why Maria's there, but anyway. So this basically explains that, in the previous war, after defeated the Shadow Dragon, unfortunately the world was pretty devastated. Gra and Bruce especially. I mean, Gra was ruled by a tyrant, and Bruce was... Yeah, you do kind of feel sad for Bruce in the end, though. I mean, their king was a massive coward, but other than that, they pretty much weren't really bad guys. And this is an event that was foreshadowed by something in the ending of Shadow Dragon. Of course, sadly, since Nintendo failed to localize the sequel, most people, you know, saw this sequel hook and it went nowhere, which is really, really annoying. But anyway, Harden is now the King of Arcania. Probably wouldn't have guessed that would happen when you first met him back in Shadow Dragon. And he's doing his best to restore the country, and, I don't know about you, but I always find in games like this, when you start to form a large army, never a good sign. Oh, and declaring yourself Emperor is even worse. Oh, don't do that. Never, ever, ever do that. Remember the rule, kingdoms are good, empires are evil. Seriously, don't. You were originally a kingdom, why would you want to be an empire? That's only a recipe for being evil. The world seems to be moving towards an era of peace. Unfortunately, though, that big ominous purple cloud shows that that's definitely not going to be the case. There's a thing with empires and this. I think that I've only found one empire in a fantasy setting that wasn't evil. And even that one was evil at one point. But first, we finally have the world map and our chapter intro screen. Yeah, I kind of missed this. This was awesome in Shadow Dragon, and they made it even more awesome because the CG artworks, yes, there is a unique one for every chapter, and they're now in full color, and they look amazing. So yes, this one, for some reason shows Marth and Sheeta getting engaged, despite that having little to nothing to do with this actual chapter. Yeah, I don't know, I guess it just shows that everything seems to be all, you know, happy and good after the previous war ended. Oh boy, is that about to change. Oh, and of course a nation under imperial rule. That's not a good idea. Now, those among you might actually notice what's going to happen in this chapter. There are a lot of similarities to the opening of Radiant Dawn, particularly the whole idea of the supposedly evil country you defeated in the previous war, and then you see them now, and they're actually being all oppressed and occupied by who you previously thought were the good guys. Yeah, this game did that first. So yeah, that's actually kind of interesting. So, in a sense, that bit of Radiant Dawn was sort of a callback to this in a way. Yes, Kane would probably do a better job at that than Jagen. Sorry, Jagen, you're cool and all, but I mean, and this line about the young, newly appointed knights, that wasn't in the original. This opening is pretty much the same as it was, except that mention of newly appointed knights. And This is where, yep, this game makes a lot more sense, in fact. Before, you just suddenly got introduced to all the new knights in this chapter, and none of them got any character development. So, you know, it's nice to see that. Now, of course, Mark here is explaining to you that Mercy mode is officially over, the training wheels are off, and now permanent death is officially on. So, yes, anyone who dies from this point on, in fact, I wonder if, this conversation is any different in casual mode. I don't know. But basically, yeah. And again, Marth wants to do this without losing anyone. Take that, Shadow Dragon. Anyway, Jagen also explains a few more new features we've got. Finally we have a transport convoy. Yes, now we won't have to chuck anything. Which is, so useful. Finally, don't have to worry about our inventories filling up, and we won't for the rest of the game. Also, we have an armory on the battle preparation screen. We also have access to reclass, not that I'm going to use it much, and I'm not going to talk about that much because I don't really like that system. Again, it just feels Fire Emblem. It just takes away all the uniqueness characters really have. And you might notice here that, see those items in our convoy? Yeah, they're the stuff that, everyone who left after the prologue was carrying. So you don't need to worry about, stripping their inventories again. It'll all go to you. Now, you might notice here, we have the members of the 7th Platoon, plus Draug and Gordon. You'll get them on your side regardless of whether or not you recruited them in the prologue. We also have one new character who will be introduced to in a little bit. Now here's reclassing. One thing, and here's the armory. I'll talk about that later. We have 10,000 gold in our possession, which is pretty generous actually. And here, if we go to the armory, we can wait. Let's choose someone. You can actually make purchases directly for the convoy, which is nice if you don't want to fill up someone's inventory. Anyway, you can buy basic iron weapons of every type, basic heal styles, and ooh, what's this? Yeah, I've got a bit of a confession to make. This file has Lunatic Mode completed. Once you've beaten Lunatic Mode, you unlock the ability to buy stat boosters from the preparations shop. You can only buy 3 of each, but still, it's pretty game-breaking. And, in the spirit of being fair, I'm not going to use that. But now we have, some base conversations. And this here, basically explains about, the situation here, gives a bit more development into Marth's reasons for coming here that weren't quite explained in the original Mystery of the Emblem. And, so they're going into General Lawrence now. And now we've got a flashback, and once again, Marth is using his new portrait. So yes, that is Lawrence. I wonder when we'll see him again. Kingdom of Arcadia? I think you're a bit behind the times. It's Empire of Arcadia now. And that's not a good sign. Yeah, and apparently he was made governor after the last war, which was pretty cool. I mean, he's a pretty nice guy. And apparently a rebellion occurred anyway. Well, that's probably because Arcadia changed its title from Kingdom to Empire. And everyone immediately knew what that would imply. Now, here, this is a pretty important conversation. We're introduced to someone new here. And all the, new knights are, here. Unfortunately, well, or fortunately, depending on, how you think about it, Jagen won't be playable in this game. And so, he's got someone else to take over his job. Meet the new Jagen archetype of this game. And if you played Shadow Dragon, you might recognize him. Or you might not, given that his recruitment was actually optional and it required missing out on another character. Interestingly enough, this game pretty much directly implies that Aran's recruitment in the last game was canon. In other words, yes, the canon path was choosing his village, not Samson's. Now, Aran here is basically going on about how he's a self-admitted Jagen archetype, and how he doesn't want you to use him, because his growths suck. and that you will all surpass him. Now, he actually does have an ulterior reason for this. It's not just that he won't be able to get any more stronger than he already is. No, there is something else about him, which we will be finding out later in his supports, and it's pretty sad. And yes, there is a reason he says this line. But you'll find that out a bit later. Anyway, I should probably talk about him now. Oh boy. When Aran said he wasn't going to get any stronger than he already is, he bloody well meant it. Just look at those growth rates. Just look at them. If you've seen some of the earlier character sheets I've made before, yeah, it was almost painful putting together this one. See, put it this way, he's still there at his highest growth. That would be considered abysmal by the standards of anyone else. And apparently, the only thing Aran has over a generic replacement paladin is a 10% luck growth. And his bases are pretty meh too. So yeah, Aran is your typical Jagen archetype, and yeah, don't be expecting any Oi phase in this game. Aran is pretty much, yeah, you don't want to be getting him too many level ups. That being said though, he certainly does have his uses, as all Jagens do. In particular, he has the ability to use a Silver Lance right from the start, and though you really don't want to overuse that because, let's face it, you want someone else to grab that Silver Lance as soon as they're able. And yeah, you probably want to use him unarmed most of the time, but as a Jagen, he does have his duties. They mainly boil down to acting as an unarmed meat shield, which he does decently well until he gets surpassed in that role by, surprisingly enough, Ryan, and no, I'm not kidding, you'll see later. And also chasing down thieves before they reach villages. In particular, in Chapter 2, he's going to need to do that, and there's this thief you really don't want to get away, and Aran is pretty much the only one who can catch him. So, again, he has his uses for that. He also has uses for, you know, visiting shops, armories, doing the kinds of things that you don't want your actual combat characters to do, but again, yeah, typical Jagen duties, which he does a pretty good job, and because of that, he's actually going to be kinda useful for the next few chapters. Unfortunately, he has a bit of a problem in that regard. You see, not too long from now, we'll be getting someone else. Someone else who does everything Aran could, and so much more. Once that guy joins, Aran will be pretty much completely and utterly useless. And who is this mysterious character? Well, he certainly is mysterious, and we'll find out in a little while. But for the moment, we're stuck with this guy, and he does an alright job of what he does. I should mention though that on the higher difficulties, especially Lunatic, you'll need to rely on this guy a lot if you even want to survive. But this isn't the higher difficulty, so... But I'm a little depressed from seeing those growth rates, so I thought I'd cheer myself up by viewing our very first support conversation. And you can read this if you want, but I'm probably going to have to spend this time talking about how the support system in this game works. Basically, supports are built like they are in Path of Radiance. You simply need to have two characters deployed in the same chapter, and it will take a certain number of chapters together for them to build up enough points for a support. Now, here's the thing though, these supports only unlock conversations. There is a gameplay-based, inbuilt support bonus that characters give each other, and those are built up in pretty much the same way the conversations are. However, they in fact are not related to the conversations, and the conversations are not related to gameplay. The two systems are totally separate, which is weird. Essentially, these are only for character development, but In that regard, they really do deliver. And it's one of the main complaints about Shadow Dragon, is that it didn't have something like this, and all the characters are pretty much just flat, bland, one-dimensional things. In this game, not so. Everyone has character development, even the ones who wouldn't really have much connections to other characters. Essentially, everybody can support with my units. And for most people, my unit is their only support option, but even then, it's often enough to get them some development. Of course, certain characters like Gordon and his brother, Marth and Sheeta, they get supports with each other, and in fact there are some surprising pairs in terms of those, but in general there aren't that many, but there doesn't really need to be. Again, these support conversations don't actually affect gameplay until the third, and even then it's only a tiny, tiny thing. And anyway, that's pretty much all I need to tell you about that. Now, Mary Sue, I've made a rule here. I'm not going to be using reclassing except for Mary Sue. She's the exception. She's allowed to reclass, and I'm going to try and reclass her as much as possible, just because I find it somewhat amusing. For this chapter, Mary Sue will be mounting her faithful steed, Swift Sue. Swift Sue can ride faster than the speed of sound, has hooves harder than diamonds, and has a mane that sparkles in the sunlight. Oh, it can also transform to and from a Pegasus at will. Jokes aside, now I'm gonna I thought I'd make a forge weapon. The other rule I have in this playthrough, only Mary Sue may benefit from forged weapons. I'm actually probably not going to forge very much because I prefer to save my gold for something you'll see a bit later. But anyway, let's see how high we can forge up the critical, and whoa, yeah, that'll be too much. I guess a little bit won't... Actually, that's a bit steep. I thought I'd have about 5,000 gold to spend on this, roughly speaking. That's probably enough. That gives a pretty decent skill sword with a decent amount of critical. Judging by the class Mary Sue's normally in, she should be critting a lot with this. Now, as for the name, I've already come up with quite a few names for Mary Sue Forge weapons. I thought I'd give them a theme. And that theme is, you probably guessed it, bad fanfiction. So... get it? Because it slashes you lol. Shut up, Mary Sue. Anyway, yep, that's basically the forging system. And again, it totally breaks Wi-Fi. Which is why, I don't know, if I ever played Wi-Fi, I'd prefer to organise a match with someone else where forge weapons were banned. By the way, don't expect me to be playing Wi-Fi with this team. This is all on an emulator. I do have the actual original game in Japanese, though. So if anyone who's watching this has a Japanese copy, we might see each other online, I don't know. Anyway, I think it's time for, thankfully though, we can actually deploy everyone in this chapter. Get used to that though, I mean, don't get used to that though, that is not going to last. Anyway, shuffling around my pictures a bit, want to put Ryan as far forward as possible because of his awful movement. And it looks like we should be ready to begin. Okay, everyone seems fine. Now, let's begin. Right, now, before we talk about this character who's going to be appearing, I should probably mention this music. This music is known as Off to War, and it caused a bit of controversy when people first heard it. It started to get a very negative reputation. People thought it kind of destroyed the feel of the original song. Most of the remixes in this game are pretty amazing, but fans were divided on this one. Greatly divided. Although, after hearing it a lot, I've actually warmed up to it. It has a new part, and that wasn't in the original version of the track, and I actually think it's really nice now. I don't know, like, I used to hate it, but now I don't anymore. Anyway, it looks like now that we've found out that General Lawrence leads the rebels. That's why there was that base conversation from before, and we're supposed to kill him. Why would we do that? He's awesome. Holy crap. Don't you think you're overreacting a little bit? Mark, yes, thank you. You say what we're all thinking. What? Why do we have to work for this guy? Yes, you know, by this guy's speech, he practically screams, definitely not a villain. Unfortunately, though, it seems like we have no choice. Oh yes, definitely not a villain. Oh yes, first person to refer to it as the Empire, actually. And now he's starting to sound like Von Karma, and that's not a good sign. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I'm really starting to hate that guy. It looks like Marth is too. But it seems we have no choice but to work for him for now. So, yeah, it looks like we're fighting on the wrong side, but we've really got no choice. I mean, if we say no, he's gonna send the might of the Empire after us, and of course we do need to speak to General Lawrence. Perhaps we can hear his side of the story. And yes, Jagen is going to be our tactician. Which means he's kind of supplanting Katarina's role, which is weird. And we're supposed to protect Marth, not that he really needs protecting from these enemies. Yeah, in case you haven't figured it out, you're actually not fighting the rebels here. You're just fighting a bunch of bandits who have taken advantage of the situation and have decided to raid the villages. So yeah, here's Aran, and yeah, there's his silver lance. There's Brian, and here is his brother Gordon. So Gaggles is back. You could have recruited him in the prologue by going to the B version of Prologue 4, like I did, but if you didn't, he'll always join here regardless, so I'll take this time to talk about him. Poor Gordon. He was the very first archer in the entire series, but unfortunately for him, he's never really been good. If you see there, his growths are all pretty meh, and if you remember Ryan, from back in Prologue 2, you'll notice that the only stat Gordon has over Ryan is luck. Other than that, the rest of his growths are just, you know, kind of meh. And yeah, when you're getting outclassed by your kid brother, that's not a good sign. To his credit, Gordon does start at a higher level and have higher bases, meaning that he's a bit easier to train. He also has a considerably higher base and skill, but considering Ryan's growth in that is so insane, Ryan will catch up in that pretty quick. But this early in the game, it's really the growth that matter, and sadly Gordon doesn't really deliver in that area. I mean, I guess he could be an alternative if Ryan got RNG screwed or something, but, yeah. I'd probably have to argue that Gordon got worse, compared to the original Mystery of the Emblem. He's probably better than he was in Shadow Dragon, but he's still not great. Compared to the original Mystery, again, worse, but in this case, only because Ryan got better. In the original, joining in the same chapter as Ryan, at 4 levels ahead of him, did give Gordon a pretty significant advantage. And that was one of the main arguments in using him over Ryan. Also, Ryan was a little hard to train then, but now, given that Ryan joined so early in the prologue, again, it's not hard to get him leveled up, and if you've got Ryan trained in the prologue, he should be at least equal to Gordon's level, and on average, he should have better stats than him by now. So, again, Gordon is, yeah, not all that, great. Not to mention the fact that, the other advantage he had over Ryan in the original was that he had a higher base weapon level, meaning that it, didn't take him as long to use good bows. Now, they both start with a D, and considering all the fighting he'll be doing in the prologue, Ryan's probably well on his way to a C by now, so, yeah, Gordon's even lost that. One final thing I need to say about Gordon. Strangely enough, despite the fact that he's an optional recruit in the prologue, if you got him, he'll start with whatever items he had in his inventory when he left in the prologue. However, if you didn't recruit him in the prologue, he comes with a fixed inventory, and actually, it's actually better than his inventory if you got him in the prologue. If you didn't get him in the prologue, he'll join with a steel bow instead of an iron one. So, personally, I think it's better if you don't get him in the prologue. But anyway, shame about that, but that's really Gordon anyway. Let's move on. Because we have another new guy to introduce. And after those two disappointments, it's nice to get a chance to say something positive. If there was an award for most improved out of all the characters that we've met so far, Draug would get it. In Shadow Dragon, Draug wasn't too impressive due to the fact that, despite being in armor, he had a surprisingly low defense growth, despite having an unusually high skill and speed growth. In the original Mystery, Draug wasn't very good either. He had a high base defense but an awful growth in that area, and he actually, didn't have very good growth in general. Not only that, but the game in general was pretty hard on armors anyway. In this game, well, just take a look at those growths. For one, you'll notice he actually has a proper defense growth now. That alone has elevated him from pretty bad to actually really good. Not just that, but he continues to have surprisingly high skill and speed for an armor. Particularly that speed. 50% speed growth on an armored unit? To put that in perspective, that's as good as Ryan, who is of a class that's supposed to be known for their speed. I mean, it's still got a disappointingly low cap, but hey, I mean, speed is nice. Now, like Gordon, Draug could have been recruited in the prologue. I didn't go that route personally, but I mean, he's only available for 2 prologue chapters anyway, so it's not really that much of a big deal. But still, I mean, I have to say, Draug, you've impressed me. He actually has improved probably the most of anyone we've met so far. Biggest improvement over both Shadow Dragon and the original Mystery. And, I mean, if you're a fan of armors, by all means, go ahead and use him. You probably won't go wrong. The only slight problem he has is strangely low strength for an armor, but it's still pretty decent. I, of course, didn't use him in my first playthrough because I had an armor my unit, but still. Unfortunately, though, there's one thing I'm going to have to say. Unfortunately, Armored Knights aren't actually so good in this game, which is strange because they were actually probably the best they've been in the series in Shadow Dragon. It's only because of a change in just the way enemy stats work. Speed matters in this game a lot more than it did before, and on the higher difficulties, you'll actually find that despite their higher defense, generals actually are less durable than other classes. I'll explain why in more detail when I get a chance to, but just put it this way, when you're taking slightly less damage than everyone else, but getting doubled all the time, that actually equates to more damage than someone who takes a bit more, but doesn't get doubled. And on the higher difficulties, that'll happen a lot. This game, is really not kind on armored units, but on the lower difficulties they can be useful. Anything above hard though, and I wouldn't recommend using one, and that's a bit of a problem Draug has. Then again though, if you're using reclassing, Draug does benefit an awful lot from the merging of the male reclass sets. Because of his abnormally high skill and speed growths, well, let's just say, if his speed is this high as an armor, imagine how high it will be in another class, especially one in the speed branch. So if you're using reclassing, I mean, he can be pretty good, but I'm not, so, Anyway, that's Draug, and I've finally been able to say something positive, that's good. And back to the chapter. And of course you'll notice we're back to fighting bandits. Let me take a look at the map here. It's a lot bigger than what we're used to dealing with, but most of it's covered by mountains anyway. And there's a lot more wide open space, and if you take a look at these enemies, they're all level 1. yeah, seeing as this was the first chapter in the original mystery, enemy stats have got a bit of a downgrade from the prologue. Here's Lawrence, and tragically, he is going to be our boss for this chapter, but we don't have to worry about fighting him. But, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Now, you will want to visit the villages here. In the original, Jagen actually recommended it specifically. But, anyway, if you want to know the full story of this place, visit these villages. Although, I'm actually going to be visiting all the houses I can. One, to show off the translation team's amazing efforts, and two, just to get some more backstory and stuff. So basically, this one's talking about how Groost has essentially gone to hell since the last war. And really, these villagers really hammer it in that you're pretty much fighting on the wrong side here, which is kind of sad. Now, there's an actual village up here, and you want to get marked to it as soon as possible. Fortunately, unlike the other games in the series, bandits can't destroy villages. Thieves still can, though, and you probably won't see any thieves on the map now, but just give it time. Yeah. Okay, now I'm going to get rid of... I don't know why I got rid of Archer first, because I don't have any Pegasus Knights here. I've just been playing some of the later chapters, and I like to take down Archers then, because of my Pegasus Knights, but in this case I don't have any, so yeah. And once again, Ryan's class... awful movement. Awful movement. Why do they have to make... Oh, come on! Oh well, at least that was a 69. I mean, you know, there's 30% chance of missing. Actually less, factoring in true hit, but still. There is no problem with exposing Ryan to the enemy there. Again, he's so much more durable than he looks. And then, of course, wide open spaces means your Cavaliers do really well here. Speaking of the Cavaliers, of course, in the original mystery, this was in fact the first time you were meeting Luke and Rhodey, and Cecil, and Ryan, Seal, sorry, and not only did they appear suddenly with no development, none of them even got lines. So this is another one of the ways that this game manages to improve over the original, more character development, and that was something Shadow Dragon needed too, so again, props to Intelligent Systems in improving this game so much over that one. And that could have ended badly, but Mark is getting a lot of kills here. Of course, the enemies being axe users means it's a perfect time for him to get experience. And right, now this guy... Whoa, even Seal doesn't double. Right, gonna weaken and then finish him off, because sadly, Ryan is not doubling just yet. He will eventually, but... yeah. Oh well. Now, you might see... maybe not, I can get marked straight to that village now, which is a good thing. But first, I want to visit some houses to get some more backstory details. And as you can tell by the depressing music here... yeah, things are really bad here, and I have to say, this may well be one of the darkest early chapters in the Fire Emblem series. Actually, now that Awakening's come out, and I've seen Awakening's first chapter, yeah, maybe not, but this is still pretty damn dark. And so this is giving some backstory about something that happened during the events of Shadow Dragon that wasn't mentioned. So apparently Garneth had actually taken the King of Groost's children hostage to blackmail him. And apparently Wendell saved them, so, hey, yeah, that's something Wendell did, besides being a crappy print mode. Sorry. A couple more houses to visit here. And this one pretty much follows on directly from the last one, so it might seem a bit weird if you, did these in the wrong order. So, yeah, basically the royal children have now been, Lawrence is protecting them, and Lawrence has been branded a traitor, and now you're going to help kill him and steal the children where they'll probably be executed. Yeah, I really don't think we're on the right side here. Now, I'll explain what Aran's doing a bit later, but first... Wait a minute, what's this? We've got a recruitment theme? Surely we're not getting this old lady on our side. Yeah, the theme itself here is a bit of a spoiler. Apparently, yeah, she's wondering whether we're, Imperial soldiers come to take people away. And Marth shows his nice guy side again, and oh, who's this? Yeah, as you can tell by the recruitment theme, we are getting another new character. She is clearly not 10. I believe in the original mystery she specifically mentions that she's actually 18, but, in this it's left more ambiguous, but, it's clear she's definitely not 10. And, well, it's always, you know, new characters are always welcome, and, maybe not for that purpose, though. Yeah. We'll find out more about Militia a bit later, because, she's a little, how do I say, delusional. But first... Did you really think they'd leave us without a healer for long? Yes, Militia is our second cleric, and if you take a look at her growths, certainly a better one than Riss was, even though she starts out a little bit weaker. Again, it's kinda hard to rate her, considering that being our only healer at this point, she's still amazingly useful. You're gonna be needing all the healing you'll get starting from now, and, so she'll be put to work pretty much immediately. But stat-wise, she's certainly not bad either. I mean, look at that speed growth. She's got decent luck and resistance too, and that's really saying something given that good resistance growths are really hard to come by in this game, even on mages. And one thing you should also note though, see that magic growth? That doesn't exactly do it justice. Her base magic growth is freakishly high by cleric standards, and I mean really freakishly high. If you reclass her to a mage, she'll have 60 magic growth. Yes, that's right, 60. That's better than all the natural mages in the game. Unfortunately, that might not be such a good idea though, because even though she'll end up with massive power, she does have a fairly low skill growth, and with a low base to back that up, if you see those averages there, yeah, that's some pretty low skill, meaning that as a combat unit, once she promotes, she might have some slight problems hitting. She'll be powerful, but yeah. So, kind of, once she promotes, she is sort of the magical equivalent of an axe user, which is pretty strange, but I don't know, I can't complain. Also, she starts with a pretty high staff rank too, so she can use pretty much all the staff she's got at this point, right off the bat. Not only that, but it's highly recommended you use her because she has a unique staff that no one else can use. Well, it may as well be no one. We'll be getting that pretty soon too. So, yeah, Militia first healer at this point, and definitely recommended. Probably the best healer in the game too. There's only one slight problem. I mentioned before that deployment slots are really tight in this game. If you want to use a lot of characters like I am, once you get to the point where your mages start promoting, sometimes using both a dedicated healer and a sage is actually not the most efficient use of your deployment slots. And on my first playthrough, sadly, I kinda had to dump Militia for, a promoted mage, later on. Which was sort of a shame, but again, that's the deployment cost, so it depends. I was trying to shove as many powerful combat units into my team as I could though, so it really all depends on your playstyle, but just be warned, later in the game you may not have room for a dedicated healer. But, of course, if you need one, she's your best option, so I really can't say anything bad about her. Well, gameplay-wise, we'll be getting to how, eccentric she is when we start seeing her supports later. Until then, though... And fittingly, Melicia's first act is going to be to heal the man she is now bizarrely in love with. Anyway, now see that cave there? We've got to get Arran to that cave, and I'll explain why a little bit later, because this part is going to end soon, mostly because I'm going to split up these chapters by save points. Whenever I hit a save point, we've got one more house to visit here. When we hit a save point, I'll be cutting the video there and picking off from afterwards. It just helps me pace the videos better. It also helps me find points where I can restore if my emulator crashes, which it does an awful lot. Now, this conversation was actually translated a little bit differently. If you remember the original Mystery of the Emblem fan translation, they said instead of noble houses, they called them tribes, and made it sound like the place was actually kind of just a backwater place ruled by a bunch of tribesmen, rather than an actual proper nation. This really changes the implications of it. I can see, yeah, where you could translate it either way, but anyway, we've just saved, so we will pick up where we left off next time.